So let's talk about the Arabian Sea. It's this huge, vital waterway connecting the Middle East and Asia. And right now, it's the stage for a really tense, silent standoff between two global giants. We're going to break down what's actually going on here. So you've got a U.S. carrier and a Chinese research ship, and they're just hanging out near each other? What's really happening in these crowded waters? For weeks now, a U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier and one of China's top-tier research vessels have been operating, well, a little too close for comfort. And let me tell you, this is no accident. It's more like a carefully choreographed dance of power, a game of intelligence gathering. Okay, so let's get right to it. First up, an encounter at sea. We need to get a clear picture of the two main players at the center of all this. All right, so on one side, you've got the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. This thing is basically a floating city, a massive military base with the carrier right in the middle, surrounded by a whole fleet of destroyers, cruisers, you name it. It's just a huge projection of American power. And then on the other side, China's Shangyang-1. Now, its official story is that it's a scientific vessel, but it's packed with some seriously advanced tech, like echo sounders that can map the seafloor in incredible detail. So yeah, two very, very different ships with very different vibes. And all of this brings us to this really important idea, strategic co-presence. So what does that even mean? Well, it's not about two navies about to start shooting at each other. No, it's way more subtle. It's a long-term game, where just being in the same space is the move. It's how you assert influence, keep an eye on things, and send a message, all without firing a single shot.
Okay, but why here? Of all the oceans in the world, why the Arabian Sea? Let's pull back the camera a bit and look at the bigger picture, because this patch of water is a seriously strategic crossroads.
Yeah, this is not just some random spot on the map. The Arabian Sea is a critical maritime corridor. Think of it as a superhighway on the water, linking the Middle East, Asia, and Europe. It's a funnel for a huge chunk of global trade and energy.
So why does the Arabian Sea matter so much?
Well, for starters, it's a global energy superhighway. A massive share of the world's oil and gas flows right through here. It also connects these key choke points you've probably heard of, like the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Aden. Plus, the area is packed with international naval bases. Basically, if you have influence here, you've got your hand on the pulse of the global economy. It's that important. All right, so we've set the stage. Now let's dig into the why. What are these two powers, with their two very different missions, actually trying to do out there? You know, a maritime analyst put it perfectly. China's sending this ship out there shows they're serious about gathering ocean data that can, really help out their navy. Officially, it's all about science. But the kind of info they're collecting, like super detailed maps of the ocean floor or the salt levels in the water, that stuff is pure gold for naval operations, especially for submarines. That data can help them find secret underwater highways to move around without being seen, or even pinpoint the perfect spot for an ambush. It's a classic case of a dual-use mission. One purpose on the surface, another one underneath. So if you look at their missions side by side, you see a tale of two very different stories. The U.S. says its goal is all about maritime security and freedom of navigation. But, the unstated goal is about projecting power and telling their allies, hey, we've got your back. For China, the stated goal is comprehensive oceanographic research. The unstated goal? Well, it's gathering that super valuable naval intel we just talked about and really expanding their influence far, far from their own shores.
Now, it's really important to remember that this whole thing isn't happening in a bubble. This is just one move on a much larger, way more complicated global chessboard, and there are a lot of other pieces in play.
Yeah, the layers of tension here are a lot. At the core, you've got the U.S. and China. Okay, now add in the super-strained relationship between the U.S. and Iran. In fact, that same U.S. carrier recently had to deal with an Iranian drone that got too close. Then you've got to factor in another major power, India, which considers this entire region its own backyard. And finally, you connect all of that to the security mess happening in nearby hotspots like the Red Sea. It gets complicated fast. So when you pack all these different players and all these tensions into one strategically vital area, well, it becomes a tinderbox. Seriously, one wrong move, one little miscalculation by anybody, and things could spin out of control in a way that nobody wants to see. So where does this all leave us? What does it mean for the future? Well, this isn't just some isolated incident. It's a sign of what you might call a new naval normal. As one senior analyst put it, safe and professional interactions are essential to avoid miscalculations. And that really hits the nail on the head. When you have so many warships from different countries all operating this close together, the basic rules of the road, professional seamanship and clear communication, they're not just suggestions. They become the guardrails that keep everyone from accidentally stumbling into a real conflict.
And that's the big takeaway here. The future of naval rivalry isn't necessarily about gearing up for some giant winner-take-all battle. It's something different. It's a persistent global competition of presence and strategic signaling. It's about showing up, showing the flag, constantly gathering information, and sending messages every single day in every important waterway across the globe.
And all of this leaves us with one final, really big question. Is this the future of conflict? Are we watching the beginning of a Cold War on the high seas? A war fought not with huge armies, but with the constant, quiet, watchful presence of warships. How we answer that question, well, that could define the rest of this century.